I think that's what good actors do. You have to just meet the audience where they are that night. And there's just as there's a relationship between the two characters on stage, there's a relationship with you and the audience as well.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Catherine LeFrere is an actor. She plays Isabella Blow in the current production House of McQueen in New York City. She sat down with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process when you get a new character?
Well, this was a little different because it's based on a real person, or it is. Isabella Blow was a real person. So I had that as a starting point to do a little research on her, even for the audition. I did a little research on her, and there isn't a ton of video of her just because she was behind the scenes, and it was before social media. She was rather prominent in like the late 90s, early aughts in the fashion world, but particularly in the UK fashion world. But generally, I like to start with the voice. So if the character has a voice that's going to be drastically different from mine in terms of like an accent. So I often go in I consider myself a character actress, I always have. And I often go in for roles that either New Jersey or Italian or from Brooklyn or the Bronx, or I like to think I do accents pretty well, so I'll go in for Russian or Italian, and so Isabella's British, and so there was that element of it, of just knowing that I had to put on a proper, I think the breakdown, the audition appointment I got from my agent, it said posh London accent. So that's at least a place to start from, because that informs a lot, because already I know if it's posh London, that's a specific part, as opposed to Alexander McQueen, he was from the East End, and they talk very differently, like opposite sides. I always say, these two characters are from opposite ends of the tracks or opposite sides of the tracks, whatever the saying is, but they spoke a similar language about fashion and art and beauty. But so for me, I always like to start with the voice and whatever that means in terms of, because, for TV and film, a lot of times I'll go in for, young mom, and she'll just talk like me. Yeah. And that's fine. And that informs choices as well. So definitely the voice. But even for an audition, that informs, I think, where I start from there. And then, of course, text analysis and stuff like that. What's going on here? Is this story based in reality or not? What is the context surrounding it? So for this, I did a lot of research to start because I didn't actually know a lot about Isabella. I didn't know who Isabella Blow was until the audition. I had heard of Alexander McQueen, of course, and I do remember when he died, and I do remember the exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum. I didn't get to see it. I think I was living in LA at the time, but I remember people talking about just how extraordinary it was, and so I regret not being able to see it, especially now. But for me, I've always just felt like the voice is where I start building a character, because I knew she was from an aristocratic background, so that also informs how someone speaks. What time was this person alive? I believe she was born she was 48 when she died in 2007. That informs also we spoke differently, at certain parts of the 20th century.
Right.
So for me, that's a big part of where the character starts. And then class, I think, or just status, not necessarily class, but status is also part of it. So she came from an aristocratic background. She ran in very specific social circles. So that affects how you carry yourself, just where you come from. It's nature versus nurture, right? And so that affects a lot of the physicality, the choices that you make vocally and physically. That's all. Once we get into rehearsal, yes, the voice, and specifically for this, because there was an accent, I wanted to come into rehearsal. I never come into rehearsal memorized. That's like kind of a rule that I have. I mean, obviously when you show up to TV and film, you're expected to come in memorized because you're shooting that day. And so, I only the series regulars can come in not completely memorized and get away with it. But when you're a day player or a guest star, you have to be memorized because time is money. So it's very different from theater. But I do not like to be memorized. I like to be familiar with the script and have read it a bunch of times and familiar with the lines. But I think if you come in memorized before you've started rehearsal, you make choices even unwillingly, you make choices that you might not be aware of, but you've made choices if you've memorized.
And is that because in the memorization process you're kind of locking something in?
Yeah, just sort of the way you're saying it or the way you're hearing it without hearing your scene partner. So, and specifically in a show like this where all of my scenes are with Luke or the character Lee, so much of my character now, who she is now, is based on what I was given from my scene partner. And so if you start memorizing, you're gonna subconsciously memorize a way that you're saying something. You're gonna get into a certain rhythm, and I think that's not great to do before you get into the rehearsal process because things change. So I worked on the accent a lot before rehearsal started, just so that we had a dialect coach that helped us a lot, but just so that I had a head start on that. And then I did a lot of research about Isabella because I just didn't know a lot about her. So her husband wrote a book after she died called Blow by Blow.
Wow.
Detmar,
that's an amazing title.
Detmar Blow. And I read that. And of course, that's his perspective of her life. And then I had some other sources online. And there's a movie being made about her right now in the UK. So she's having a moment, Isabella Blow. It's interesting when people die, it takes like a good 20 years and then people start talking about them again.
Yeah.
But Isabella Blow is definitely back on the radar and people are remembering her now. And she was quite influential. Like she really did have quite a voice, especially if you were really in that world in the late 20th century. She was very influential in the fashion world. And
like had an eye for talent.
She did. And yes. So everything that happens in the play, she did go to his grad school showcase and she was like scouting the talent. And apparently I read that she was late and so there were no seats left and she sat on the floor, which is very easy. And she just thought what she saw up there was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. And she bought his whole collection for £5,000. Like it would have been pounds back then. And she paid it off in installments over time. And I believe before that, she had also discovered Philip Tracy, the milliner, the hat maker. And after Alexander McQueen, she discovered Sophie Dahl, the model, and I think another model. But she had an eye for talent. And she saw things like before other people did. So getting back to your original question, I think that process, it starts with text analysis. It starts with a little bit of research, if there is something to be researched. I mean, obviously, if something is fiction, then it's always interesting to talk to the playwright and say, what was the source material for this? Because usually there is some sort of source material. But I watched a couple of the documentaries on Alexander McQueen. Just because I'm not someone who knows anything about couture. I mean, I appreciate clothes. I love fashion, but I don't know a lot about the world at all. And so I just wanted to get an idea of the world and who Isabella Blow was. And then I had a phone call with the director about, a week before we started rehearsal. And he said, I'm never going to tell someone not to do research, but he's like, I'm not looking for an impersonation. I'm not looking for an impression of her. Like, I want to create an Isabella Blow in this world, in this version of the play. And that was very freeing in some ways because, I wasn't trying to do a vocal impersonation. I mean, I feel like I have little things that, again, there's not a lot of recording of her, so there's no way I could ever have really done a spot-on impression. But that's just not what we were going for here. And same with Luke's performance. He's not trying to do an impression of Alexander McQueen either. But we are trying to sort of embody them in some way, and their spirit and their intention and their struggles and stuff like that.
I guess there's always a burden when you're playing somebody real, where you have this instinct to like almost impersonate, right? Because you're if anything, you're thinking that will unlock something if you get into the body and move like the person or something like that. But then you're stuck in kind of like an impersonation kind of choices, and that can't be good. So it's interesting you say that. When he said that kind of like you said, freed you, because then you're able to oddly though come back around on things that matter, and then somebody who was there, I bet you, that knew her would probably say, like, you really got her.
Yeah.
Where maybe you wouldn't if you went the other route.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. And and I think, comedy and all of that, there's another time and place for doing an impersonation of someone or doing a parody of someone, and and I love doing that too, and I've done that in different shows. But if you really want to ground something in reality, you have to somehow find a way in through your own lens, and that's true of acting just in general. You have to find your own way in. But yeah, so I just found that really freeing when the director said that to me. Not that I was planning on doing an impression of her anyway, but I found that was a great place to start from.
Yeah.
And then of course, the costumes and the wig and all of that help, because I do now look, when I'm all dolled up, I do look a little more like her. And so once you add all that in, and then now I've added personalization, then it all really comes together. Like even I have one wig throughout the whole show. Now she had many different haircuts throughout her life, but the wig designer was like, we're just gonna stick with the one that kind of represents her. But again, we're not trying to this was her hair in the early 90s and this was her hair in the early aughts. We just kind of let that all go. And same thing, I think, with the other characters in the play that are based on real people. I think that's true. I think we're all kind of on the same page in the cast. Like, we didn't try to do a carbon copy of, obviously all of, they're all based in reality, or most of the characters in the play are based on real people. But I like that was the choice that the director and that the playwright made. But we still, you look at the social media team has done a post where there's a side-by-side of Joyce McQueen, Lee's mother, and someone actually, the opening night party, there's a picture, a Getty image of Luke and I together, and we did not coordinate our opening night outfits. Luke has an entire team of people that I do not have, and he was wearing this almost like a gray trench coat suit look. It was very nice. And I had a black, I forget what the material is. It's like a vegan leather, but it was like a shiny black dress on. And they took a picture of us, and some fan found an image of Isabella Blow and Alexander McQueen in almost the same exact outfits. She was wearing a shiny black dress. She had a funny hat on that I did not have on, and he was wearing a gray suit. And they put it side by side, and it was uncanny. It was quite,
crazy.
And we did for a moment we looked like them. I mean, different, but and I wish we could say we coordinated that, but we absolutely did not. And the fact that some fan even found that,
it's so wild.
And it was within hours of the party. I think I woke up the next morning and the Getty images were already out, and this person had already.
That would scare me.
That was a little wild. No, Luke has a massive following all around the world, and so they find things that
It's amazing.
I'm
so weird. So, because you were saying that you don't like to be memorized for a play at the beginning, I'm gathering that there's a discovery process that is telling me that you like to go through there. So that means but you can tell me if I'm wrong, there's some kind of patience that you have with finding this person. And it's nice when a director says, don't, kind of says something freeing like that. Then you're like, okay, this might actually be a place of discovery, and I could finally be able to discover. Is that what happened in this case?
My general rule, and every director's different, and sometimes it depends how long you have for rehearsal as well. That's very different. I've done shows where I've had 5 days of rehearsal before we went into tech. You've had 2 weeks of rehearsal. If you do summer stock, you don't get a lot of time to figure things out, and so people have to come in a little more familiar with the script just because you're going to run out of time. We had a nice long month rehearsal process before we went into tech. But my general rule is I come in familiar with the scene and a general maybe understanding. I mean, we did a good amount of table work as well. So we started with the first 2 or 3 days. We read the play, and we read it. We would read a chunk and stop and talk, a chunk and stop and talk. And I love table work. And sometimes you're like, all right, let's get up on our feet. But we talked for a couple of days, and it was really, really interesting, especially on a new play, because it was very helpful for the playwright just to sit and listen to all of us talk about it and what we think's going on, and or even problems we had with it. They were very open to us sort of having constructive criticism. So once we did table work, we got up on our feet and we started from the top, and we worked our way through mostly in chronological order. And Isabella actually doesn't come until page 30. So I actually had like a couple days off, which was nice. And then once they got to page 30, I was kind of in from there on out. And so we block the scene, and our director, Sam, and every director is different, but I really liked how he worked with us, because he would come in with sort of an idea of the shape of the scene, like a general shape of the scene. And he would give that to us kind of before we started, and then we would go from there. And some directors just go, and we'll see what happens, which is also fine. That's just a different way of working. But he had like an idea in his head, but once we got there, if that didn't work, it didn't work, and that's fine. And he was very willing to be malleable.
Is this good for you because it's just a certain little shape?
It's a little bit of just direction of what he thinks he sees. Like his job is to help guide us, and especially because this play is was so technically complicated and is so visually spectacular. That was part of it. And also he knows what he's had many meetings with the designers at this point. So he has more of an idea of what's happening than we do, like just in a blank rehearsal room with like nothing but a table and a couple of chairs. But I found it helpful to have like a skeleton, and then we filled it in. And then there were sometimes that things just weren't working in an idea that he had come in with, and that was okay. And that's what rehearsal is for. So once we blocked the scene, and we would spend, like a good hour or so on each first scene, and then we would just leave it. Even if it wasn't finished, we would just walk away for a little bit, and we would come back to it a few days later. So my general rule is once I've blocked it once, because usually I'll keep the script in my hands and I'll write down blocking notes. The next time we come back to that scene, I like to be off book for the next time we come back to it. Because then that's when you really can start to explore. To me, with a script in your hand, it's kind of hard to explore. And not everyone's like that, but it's just hard to look down at your script and look up at your scene partner. So to me, that first pass is more about general blocking and just a general sense of what's going on. And then the next time we come back to it, I like to be as off book as possible. Obviously, you're not always 100% off book, and someone is there for you to call line. That's how I like to work. And then that's, to me, is where the real discovery begins. And so by the time we've gotten to the second pass at it, that's when we can start tweaking and start really listening to each other and just, figuring out the details. What is really going on here between these two people? What are they actually talking about? What am I trying to get out of this person? Actory terms and things that I don't generally use. But then we can really talk. Now that we have an understanding of, okay, I sit on this, or we think I'm going to sit here. We think, and this is the prop we think I have here. Because very early on in rehearsal, we did have a good amount of props, which was very helpful. Even though there aren't a lot of props in this show, there's not really a set in this show. There's a couple of platforms that move, and then we have a lot of projections and a couple of big LED screens behind us. But so the discovery is throughout. I would say this weekend I discovered like 10 new things that I wish had occurred to me before we opened. Because now
isn't that what always happens?
Yes, and also just like it takes a while. Like it takes. I heard. Who did I speak once? Laura Linney came to speak at Northwestern when I was a student there, maybe like my senior year. I don't know, I think she was maybe doing a show in Chicago, and she came and talked to us, which was great. And she said something that she's like, it takes a full 3 months. Like when she's done like long running shows on Broadway, she's like, it takes 3 months to really figure it out. And of course you're never gonna have 3 months of previews. So we had 3 proper weeks of previews. More like 2.5 weeks, because press started, halfway through our third week. But it just takes a while, especially on a new work, and we were making changes every single day up until the last day of like when press started. We were making changes every single day, so we had rehearsal during the day, and then we had to implement it that night, and that's really it's really hard. And so now that the show is frozen, we're having so much. We had such a ball this weekend, and we're just playing, and of course we're coloring within the lines, right? Sure. But we're discovering things, and we're trying things, and the pressure's off, and it's great. And I'm excited to do it for a while longer, because I feel like, I'm just discovering more and more and more things.
You're making me want to come back and see it again.
And Luke really, I mean, he's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger.
Wow.
He's. My mother has seen it 3 out of the last 4 Saturday matinees, and she saw a very early preview, and it's changed a lot since then. And she was just like, every time I notice something new, and it's getting stronger and stronger, and it is. And I don't know when you saw it, but if you came back, I guarantee you it would be stronger. And everyone's just little moments here and there, just the details. And so I'm constantly discovering new things. And I would hope that's how you keep it fresh. Otherwise it gets stale. You don't want to get into a robotic rhythm. But we're in that really sweet spot right now where like we just opened, we've done this. Last night was our 32nd performance.
Whoa.
And you know, but we like know it well enough now that we don't have to like, what's my next line?
Yeah.
Where do I go for this costume, this quick change off stage? But we're having a good, but we can also experiment a little bit. And if the audience is into it, if they're laughing a lot, we can have a little more fun. Okay, if it's a more quiet audience, all right, we're going to plow through these scenes a little faster because we probably don't need to hold for laughs.
I've heard you say that the audience is very important to you.
It is.
The feeding off the audience.
It is. That is for me. I feel like I'm a different actor once an audience comes into, or even like, we had a final run through in the rehearsal room, and we had like 50 people in the room, people that were going to be in the wardrobe department, the wig department, just to come to get an idea. And for a lot of those people, that was the only time they got to see the show because they're backstage. So everyone who was involved, like the designers, they call it a designer run through. But even with that was like a little audience for us. And that was just, it was nice to have that energy because we had been doing it just for ourselves for a month. Yeah. But I feel like I'm a completely different actor once I get an audience than I am in the rehearsal room, just because I need to feel that energy. I need to feel them either chuckle or not chuckle or take a breath. And that's just what I feed off of. Yeah. That's like you have to listen so hard. There's in my first scene in the show, there's one line that gives me trouble every night that some nights it's the line before mine. It gets a laugh, and some nights it doesn't. And it's through no fault of the person who says it before me. It's just depending on the audience. And so I have to be so quick because if I don't hold and they laugh, I'm jumping on the laugh. And if I hold and they don't laugh, then it seems like I came in late. Oh, yeah. And it's different every show. Wow. And every night I just have to be on my toes, and I give it the splits, the tiniest of split seconds to hear if there's going to be any sort of a chuckle. And then if there isn't, then I just keep going. But during previews, I really had to navigate that because some nights people would laugh and I would step on it. And then other nights I would hold for it and nobody would laugh.
Are you getting an idea where you're almost anticipating it because you're able to size up the audience now? You're like, I bet you this is going to be a laugh night. I
think, because my character comes in so late and there's some consistent laughs earlier in the show, like we can get the temperature early on. I mean, Isabella, I also think she provides a good amount of levity in the show. Like I do have a lot of the jokes, even though it's obviously not a comedy. So sometimes I feel like I come in and I try to wake them up. But other times there's some other jokey moments early on that we're like, all right, this is going to be a house that's a little more vocal.
If you want to hire me to just be in the audience and laugh
as a plant?
So that way you don't have to think about this. I'll just laugh.
It doesn't necessarily mean they're not into it, because sometimes we'll have quiet audiences and then they'll be standing at the end and cheering and say it was the best thing they've ever seen. And so it's so interesting to us because, I mean, of course we love it when we laugh because we all like to hear people laugh because we think that means we're doing a good job. But it's been so interesting because the shows can be the audiences can be drastically different just in terms of response. But it is very important to me. And so it forces you to listen. Yeah. Because once you've gotten your lines and it's in your muscles and it's in your body, it's easy, like you can check out. But because of the audience, you have to stay on your toes because there's a line that consistently gets a laugh, and we had a matinee audience, I don't know if it was this weekend, that they're just quiet. But they were very warm and lovely at the end. And there's one line I have that always gets a laugh. And Luke always holds for it, and he held, and there was no laugh. It was like you could have heard a pin drop. And that's rare, but it does happen. And so and so he now, I think, also knows, he's like, all right, that might not get a laugh either. Yeah. So you really have to be on your toes, and you have to be listening really, really hard, because it's that split second of you go, do I hold? And it's a millisecond.
Yeah. It sounds like you don't even have a preference in terms of energy from the audience, as long as they're there.
Yeah, as long as they're listening. Yeah. I think if they've checked out, that's not great. Yeah. But as long as they're listening, I mean, of course, I love a laugh, but this isn't a comedy, so then of course it's not, the pressure isn't on. If it was like a farce and they weren't laughing, that would be bad. Right. But this is a play with some very serious topics. So, and it's I won't spoil it for anyone who's coming, but the first tableau of the show is a rather dramatic tableau. Yeah. And everyone, most people who come to see the show know that Alexander McQueen committed suicide. Mm-hmm. So they don't all know that Isabella Blow committed suicide, but we're dealing with some serious topics, and you know how the play is going to end in theory. If it's about his life, it's going to end with him dying. So sometimes I think people don't know that they're allowed to laugh. And I like to see Izzy and my characters, when I come on, I like to think I'm giving them permission to laugh. And I don't know that they always accept that permission, but I like to think I'm giving them a little bit of permission to laugh. And you have to, because even when you're dealing with really, really serious things, there needs to be a little levity. Otherwise it'll just be, you'll walk out of the theater, not wanting to get out of bed the next day.
Right. So my experience was, and this is the way I am as an audience member. Not just in theater, just in general. I'm a snob. I'm cynical about work so much. I'm rarely taken away, right, by something. Yet it took me like halfway through your section to realize the great work you were doing, and that's a compliment. Then I started realizing this is more than a great performance. I think you're the keystone of the play. The tone you reach with her seems like it needs to be so precise. You're talking about this is not a comedy, but she is elevated in a certain way. I think if you pushed it harder, it would push it over.
Too much, right?
You go under.
It's not enough.
So tell me how you arrived at this, because this is what I'm really interested in.
It's a very fine line. I think I'm still figuring that out, to be honest. But yes, there's always, it's a theatrical piece in general. It's a stylized piece in general. There's a heightened, some of the characters more so than others. And, Luke, our leader, he has done a tremendous job grounding us in reality, which I think you need, because there's so much of the play that we some scenes are in fantasy world, we're not in reality anymore. And so, yes, for me, there's always, no one ever has to tell me to be more. I've been told too much, I've been too much, but no one usually says, you're not doing enough. Usually people say, do less. So, it's a really fine line. And yes, the director, I trusted that Sam was going to tell me when it was too much. And he actually encouraged me to often go a little further in some ways. And then it had gotten to the point where the sort of, I won't say character level of it, but just the style of performativeness, if that's even a word, got to the point where Luke and I had kind of stopped. I felt like it was getting in the way of our listening to each other. And so then Luke and I had like a chat about sort of, because I look out a lot at the audience, because there's just a beautiful, the director kept saying to us, it's really, really beautiful when you and Luke are just, looking out, and Izzy sees things that nobody else sees. And then it became kind of like, it was a thing I tried in rehearsal that kind of just became a thing. And then it got to the point where like Luke and I were never looking at each other. And I was like, okay, I think and of course, in theater, you're never just directly looking at someone when you're speaking. You're cheating at different moments, and you say some lines out and you say some lines directly. But there was like a heightened level of that. And so Luke and I had, during previews, we had like a chat, and we were like, I think we could be connecting more. And so that helped a lot, for me at least, like pull me back in and just listen more to him. And then of course there's a lot that's still out, and there's a lot where there's scenes where he's dressing me and he's behind me. So I think that's what I was sort of trying to just follow, like the moments where because the most important thing is the relationship. That's the most important thing in every scene. I would say that to any actor, because I coach acting as well. I coach a lot of actors who are like right out of college, and they do a lot of musical theater, and they want to do more TV and film. And so I do a lot of coaching, and I would always say the most important person in the scene is always the other person. Even if you have more lines, the most important person in the scene is always the other person. But the relationship is the most important part of the scene. And so when the character kind of overtook the relationship, that's when I kind of knew it was probably too much. But it is a really, really fine line. And I gauge the audience and where they are that night or that day. And I'm like, if they're a little more into the sort of heightened, silly side of her, if they're laughing at kind of some of the more ridiculous things she says, I might lean a little more into it. If they're not, then I might pull back a little bit. And that's just because I think we pick up, and I can see it happen with Luke too. Like we just pick up on the tone, and there will be moments where I can see he won't get necessarily as heightened emotionally in a certain part. It'll be more grounded, and he won't scream quite as loud, even though it doesn't mean he won't get as heated. It's just different. And I think that's what good actors do. I think you have to just meet the audience where they are that night. And there's just as there's a relationship between the two characters on stage, there's a relationship with you and the audience as well. It's a three-way.
You almost see people not doing that, don't you, when you go out and you're like I pick up on that. Like you're not letting us in or something.
Right. Yeah. No, I really believe you have to meet the audience where they are. And also the size of the space, like it's an enormous space. If we were doing this in a small black box, it would be completely different. Yeah. Even if we were doing the same play, telling the same story, there's no way like it would be as broad or as big. Yeah. This is a very, very large space. And even though we're mic'd, like the people at the top of the house, we still have to project as though we're not mic'd, because there's people very far back.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, do you have like some kind of opinion about being mic'd? Because you have a very strong voice. You have a strong instrument. Do you have a certain a judgment about it that you had to like deal with?
No, I mean, I hate wearing the mic pack. That like having to wear the mic pack sucks. Yeah. So luckily they put it in my wig, so I don't have to worry about it being on mic, because there's no way with all the costumes that I wear we could hide it. So it's in my wig. So if I'm going to wear a mic, I prefer it to be in my wig so that it just doesn't get in my way. I like being mic'd. I mean, especially if you're going to do a musical and it saves your voice. It's very hard to hear over instruments. So, but I like it for this because the house is so big. I'm treating it as, in my mind, I'm not mic'd. I'm still projecting, and because it's up to the soundboard operator to figure out those levels. Yeah. So I'm projecting as though I am not mic'd, and she's going to meet me where because I'm not thinking about that at all. To me, I'm on a stage and I have to reach the back of the house. It will say it's probably helpful to save your voice in the long run, because I don't have to like overreach. And she even said to us the other day, and I will always do this, she's like, if you're not feeling great that day, come talk to me before the show and say, hey, bump me up tonight. And they will. And that's what a good soundboard operator should do. And so that's a nice thing to have, just because some days you're going to feel better than others. Some days you're going to be battling allergies or a cold, and and you're going to need a little extra help. But in my mind, I'm not mic'd, even though I know I am. But honestly, sometimes I forget about it. The only time I'm reminded is sometimes Luke and I, during previews, this is something we just had to figure out, on the soundboard operator had to figure out, we get close to each other and our mics would pick up each other and then you get feedback on stage. And that's part of previews and tech, is just figuring out the levels. And it took a few performances to figure that out. So when you hear that, then you go, oh, I forgot. Oh yeah, that's right, I'm mic'd. But otherwise, I just assume I'm not.
What about the tech aspect of this, the design aspect, the technology that you're almost acting with? Have you ever done anything like this, first of all? And I'm going by your face that you haven't. No. So when did that get introduced in the rehearsal process? How easy was that to coordinate yourself with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the technical elements are like another character, especially the costumes. For me, especially, is like another character in the show. And by the time we were done in the rehearsal hall, which was just a big room with a mirror, we were ready. Like we couldn't go any further with the telling of this story without adding the technical elements because it's such a tech heavy show. I've never done a show that's like heavily relies on projections and stuff like that. I have done a show with as many, if no more costumes. I did a show once that had like over 160 costumes. It was a production of As You Like It at the Shakespeare Theater in DC, and it had like 160 costumes. It was designed by the late great Martin Pacladinas. Amazing costume designer. And so that was, and there was a lot of technical elements in that as well. And it was I think my first equity show. I was like 23 years old. So it was a long time ago. So that was nuts as well, and costumes. But this is the first time that I've had something that's been so much a part of the story. And also because Isabella, the costume designer, said to me early on that they had made a choice to tell the fashion story through Isabella. So, because I think a lot of people come to the show expecting to see everyone in real Alexander McQueen pieces, which I find so funny because it's a story about his life. So you're gonna meet real people who are not models or wearing, wearing Alexander McQueen pieces. But also people ask me, like, do you get to wear real McQueen pieces? And I'm like, well, first of all, those clothes were made for models who are 6 feet tall, and, which I'm not. Yeah. And second of all, couture is also made to like fall apart on, the minute it gets off the runway. It would never hold up 8 shows a week. Nothing is meant to be worn 8 shows a week. Yeah. So I am wearing, except for my first costume is a vintage Vivienne Westwood, which our amazing costume designer found somewhere from some collector, who apparently Isabella also helped discover Vivienne Westwood. Every other piece I wear is a copy, a handmade to my body, handmade copy of a real McQueen piece that was in a runway. And so the pieces are telling the story chronologically, through my costumes. So the pieces I wear, the runways are actually in chronological order. So if you do know a lot about Alexander McQueen and his pieces, if you came to see the show, you'd be like, that piece is from Deliverance, that piece is from I. So that's a huge part of like, and when I'm not on stage, I'm changing backstage. And so that became a huge part of just my responsibility and my track. And I have like 2 or 3 dressers, people helping me. And so that's become, just a part of the process as well, because I come off stage and I have to come prepare for a rather emotionally charged scene that I'm about to go into, but I'm also like doing a quick change, which is rather frenetic and can be anxiety provoking, because if one thing goes wrong, you don't make it on stage on time. Like everything is timed within an inch of its life. Some of them are shorter than others, and I only have one that's like extremely tight, but you can't take your eye off the ball. So that's an added element of just stress. And I think now we're in a rhythm and we've done it a bunch, but you still, you can't like check out. You can't. In terms of the other technical elements, I can't see a lot of it, obviously. Yeah. So I'm sure I love to watch the show. I'm sure it's incredibly beautiful. The Joan of Arc scene where the shock therapy treatment, I haven't really seen it. I mean, one day in tech, our director let me stand back and kind of see what's going on, but without me standing there, I don't think I was getting the full picture. Yeah. So I'm sure it looks amazing. I've heard it looks amazing, but so I don't know what's going on behind me. So actually that doesn't really inform anything I'm doing, because I have no idea what it looks like behind us. I'm sure it looks really cool. Yeah. But I have no idea.
It's somebody else's job. Like you don't have to kind of time anything. It's almost time.
Someone's taking it off of me. Yeah. I mean, there's some sound cues and light cues, and I take a step and the light comes up, and so I'm the stage manager's looking at me and I'm waiting. But most of the things I believe they're taking off of me, as opposed to me having to wait for them. But there's sound cues, there's music and stuff. There's a lot of music in the show, so that obviously affects if there's underscoring in a scene. That's definitely going to affect just the tone. But no, the technical elements. I mean, Tech Week was so insane. I mean, it was so. I've never been part of a tech like that. I've been part of some hard techs where just things went wrong, or we ran over, or we ran out of time. This wasn't even that. It was just so complicated. It was so very complicated. And then by the time we got back to doing a full run, we hadn't touched the first act in a week. You know what I mean? So we left it for a while, and we hadn't seen that scene for a while. And so Luke and I had to check in a couple times with each other and be like, all right, let's continue to talk about the scene work as well, because right now the technical elements are getting all the attention as they deserved to get. But he and I would, even if we were just in a break or in a quiet moment, we'd be like, I'm still struggling with this. I'm still struggling with that. Like, maybe we could try this. Maybe we could suggest this. Maybe we could ask about this tomorrow. Or we would do a preview and we would talk after and we'd say, all right, tomorrow we're going to ask about this. Or we're going to see if we can work this moment.
So that's also why now it's really settling in, because of the tech aspect too.
It's gone. Yeah, we're not changing anymore. We can let that go. Like, it's all a well-oiled machine now for the most part. I mean, every now, listen, it's live theater. Things go wrong. 2 performances ago, I have these shoes that are quick rigged just so that we can get them on and off easily. And as I'm walking out, the shoe popped, the strap. And it's the scene where I come out in the big poofy pink jacket, and she's already kind of, about to go to the insane asylum. And so, it's so funny what happens as an actor when something goes wrong on stage, and you continue to go with your lines because it's in your it's muscle memory. So you're still going and you're still doing it, but in your head you're thinking, what do I do? What do I do? Like, how do I handle this in this moment? Do I take the shoe off? Because people can see that the shoe's broken. Yeah. Do I limp around on stage? And and so what I ended up doing is I just ended up keeping the shoe on and kind of limping around, hoping that Luke would notice. I don't think he did. He noticed something was off by the sort of middle of the scene, but the other 2 people in the scene had no idea. Wow. My mother in the second row noticed, only because she had seen it. She had seen it a couple times. But I asked her after. She said it honestly just looked like you were drunk, which Isabella probably was. But it's so funny when something goes wrong on stage. Luke and I were talking about this, how you immediately panic. Yeah. But you also it's sort of like fight or flight. Just your instincts take over and you go, I'm going to handle it. Like, I'm going to come up with something and I'm going to handle it. And and of course, the scene is probably not the best version of the scene that it's ever been, because there's part of you that's not fully present because you're thinking about how to handle the emergency. But it is kind of amazing just what the body does, because the scene went on, of course, and we didn't stop the show over a broken shoe. Right. And I just limped off and, and I burst out into laughter the second I got off stage because it was so funny. And then we fixed the shoes, but that's live theater. Things things are going to drop. That's right. One of the first previews, there's a sword with the little boy, and it fell off the edge of the stage, and he just had the foresight to, when the scene ended in the black, he just picked it up. Oh no, that's not what he did. It fell off to where it wasn't supposed to be. Yeah. It stayed on stage for an additional scene, and everyone backstage is thinking, how are we going to get the sword off stage? How are we going to get the sword off? It's like a plastic or like a cardboard sword. And the little boy makes a cross, that one of the younger actors, I say little boy, but they're young, they're 13 and 11. Yeah. And he makes a cross across the stage in a little scuba diving outfit about the sea. And the actor he bent down and he picked it up, and we were all backstage yes! It was just such it was such quick thinking, and it was so professional. And then the other night during the dance number, someone's necklace fell off and you just heard it go crash. And another actor just picked it up and danced with it in her hand. And I saw it out of the corner of my eye, and I thought, that's teamwork. That is teamwork. And, and the audience probably, nobody noticed, or if they did, it didn't matter. Right. But it's just
or you think it's part of it.
It's part of it. It's absolutely part of it. I mean, the audience also, I've been to shows where someone's wig falls off. It's like on Saturday Night Live when someone breaks and cracks up and laughs. Right. The audience loves that because it's real. That's right. It's real. But
it's almost everything. Yeah. Everything, it's real, we love.
But getting back to your point, it's that's why we're discovering and we're playing now, because the technical elements, we don't have to think about them so hard. Yes. But the first few weeks, it was what's next? What's next? What change are we doing now? Where do I go? Where do I enter from? I mean, just so many things to think about. There's cheat sheets backstage, there's scene order, there's what change is happening when. But now it's it's in our body. But now we're starting to sort of get the understudies ready to go on, just because we've been running for a while. Yeah. Someone will inevitably get sick. Yeah. So now every night we're having one or two understudies shadow backstage, meaning they follow us around backstage just to see, because you can watch the play from the audience a million times, but until you really know what's going on back there, it adds a whole added element, because there's so much happening backstage. There's so many changes happening, and there's people, and you have to not bang into, and it's dark also. It's you could bang into something, you have to stay quiet. So now we're starting to get the understudies ready, and I think that'll be really exciting when an understudy gets to go on, because I've understudied a couple times before, and I've never gone on as an understudy, and It's so exciting because you do all this work and you have to be ready at a moment's notice. It's so hard.
And with
it's
a play
such
like
hard
this, where you have to know so much of the other aspects of it.
Somebody was saying the other day in the cast, I don't know if it was Emily or if it was Emily's understudy, Jackie, was saying that did a play with Christopher Walken, and he would love it when an understudy would go on because it would add like a freshness.
Yeah.
If it's, something you've been running for 3, 4, 5 months, like you get into a rhythm, and not always a good rhythm, and it would add some new is in the cast, and of course they don't know the show as well, and everybody has to like help guide them around on stage, and you have to have their back. We're all teammates, and so I'm excited for when inevitably in a long run there will be understudies, or if we run for hopefully long enough, someone will need a day off here or there because something, a wedding or whatever, a vacation, and so I'm excited for when that happens. We have lovely, lovely understudies, and I'm sure they're going to be wonderful. But so that's the next step is now getting the understudies ready.
So, as I said before, at a certain point, I was just appreciating you as an actor. You seem like you really have a control over your instrument. I just want to know, is there something that people don't realize is really important about this work that you have realized is really important? It could be something simple, but that we've overlooked. Because there are people that I see on the stage. They're good, but they don't have a command. You seem to have a command on the stage.
I've been told similar things before, like a presence, or that I've been told sometimes it can be good and bad. But sometimes people will say, "I couldn't take my eyes off you. I couldn't look at anybody else on stage," and that's not always great. And I wish I could say I knew what it was, but I don't know what it is. We call it, if you see someone, you go, oh, that person just has it, like the it factor. I'm not saying that that's what that is. I'm not trying to, toot my own horn. I wish I could tell you what I know what you're talking about, and I wish I could tell you what that magical thing was. I don't know. I don't know. And I actually, Meryl Streep, they asked her once, they were like, what makes you so good? Or what is it that you do? And she's like, I don't know, and I don't want to question it because I'm afraid if I look too hard, I'll stop doing it. And I'm not comparing myself to Meryl Streep at all. But I don't know. All I can do is my best work. I mean, to me, I think I have a good sense of timing and rhythm, and I hear comedy, I hear jokes a certain way. To me, it's like music. So I do know that I'm confident that I have really good comedic timing, and I just hear things, and I think you're born with. I think I can't teach somebody that. I can teach someone to hear a joke. I can teach someone to like find a rhythm, and there's power in threes. We always say that, but I don't think you can teach someone timing, and I think my timing I just have. Other than that, I don't know, but to me, it's about preparedness. So I like to rehearse. To me, I like to be so well rehearsed that I can just let go and explore and try, and not try new things, but if something occurs to me that night, something occurs to me that night. But everything is rehearsed within an inch of its life. Like nothing is just, I'm not, they say Lucille Ball, who's arguably the greatest comedian ever, every single moment was rehearsed. Nothing was improvised because comedy is like, there's choreography, and the timing has to be precise, perfect. If it's off by a hair, it doesn't work. So to me, it's all about the preparedness. It's not left up to chance. Of course, like I said, the audience is going to be different every night. But now I've experienced it both ways. So I've experienced them when they're not laughing at all, when they're laughing a lot, when they're somewhere in the middle. So now I've got that under my belt, and I have like those versions. But to me, the freshness and the presence, it all comes out of being prepared, having it marinate. It's it's been sitting with me for a few months now, and now I feel like I'm just hitting the really sweet spot of just like playing with her. But I wish I had a better answer to your, I'm not someone, I'm never going to write a book about acting because everyone has their own process. And I couldn't even really tell you what mine is, other than I've been doing it for a while. I've never wanted to do anything else. To me, I have to make sense of the text. I don't, in acting school, they're like, what is your objective? What are your active verbs? And I had a teacher once that said, these are all tools that we're giving you, but you're eventually going to go, I'm going to take that one, I'm going to take that one, and I'm not going to take this one, And so now I just have my process, and I don't put I'm not like this, I don't have a guide. I don't have it's not necessarily, it's just how I work. And I think at some point when I was a younger actor, I just let it go. And I just said, it doesn't have to, I'm not a method, Stella Adler or Meisner or whatever. There isn't one method. I have a teacher that I study with that I've been studying with for 18 years. His name is Bob Krakauer, and I study religiously with him. And he's my mentor. And every Wednesday I take class. When we have class, obviously now with the show, but now that we're open, I'll be back in class next week. And, and we study, but we just practice. It's just, it's like going to the gym. It's going to the gym. It's exercising a muscle. There's not just one thing, there's not just one thing. And what makes somebody special or not special, and I know exactly what you're saying, and I wish I could but I don't think it's tangible.
I think you're the last person to answer why you're special, right? Everybody else should be talking about it.
I'm only going off of what people have told me. I don't know what I look like on stage. And sometimes, I think every actor has a moment where you go, am I just actually terrible and everyone's in on the joke? Everyone tells me I'm good, but I'm actually really bad and everyone's just in on the joke. I have those thoughts all the time. What if I'm just actually really not that good? But I've been told similar things. People say, I can't take my eyes off you. You have such presence. And I don't know what to tell you other than I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing the best I can. And I hope what people will say about me, that I'm nice to work with and that I'm a generous scene partner and that, they feel comfortable talking to me or asking me questions, or if they need something from me that I would provide it. And I would hope that I could ask the same of them. But other than that, I don't know.
What I would love you to come back on to talk about your other work one day.
Sure.
Catherine LeFrere, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.